It's 2 a.m. on an ordinary Tuesday. You're lying in bed, sheets tangled around your body, eyes fixed on the white ceiling that seems to pulse in the darkness. The air conditioner hums softly, but you don't even notice because they're there again, inside your head, occupying every corner, every thought, every second of silence. Not because you want them there. You've tried everything to push them out. Deleted the photos from your phone, one by one, fingers trembling over the delete button. Stop checking social media, blocked, unblocked, blocked again. You've told yourself 1,000 times, staring at the bathroom mirror, voice firm, trying to convince your reflection, it's over. Moving on. I deserve better. But your brain isn't listening. It replays the memories. Replays. And the good ones hurt the most. Their laughter echoing in your head like a song you can't stop hearing. The way they looked at you that Sunday morning, sunlight streaming through the curtains, that night when everything felt perfect and you believed it would last forever. And you hate yourself for it because logically, you know it's done. Logically, you know they're not coming back. Logically, you know you deserve better. But logic has nothing to do with this. Something in your brain is holding on, gripping tight, refusing to let them go, no matter how much you beg for freedom. This is the real story of an invisible war, the battle happening inside your skull when you lose someone you loved. And tonight, I'm going to explain exactly what that something is. Not opinions, not empty self-help theories. The real science behind your brain's betrayal. Because once you understand what's really happening inside your head, everything will start to make sense. And making sense is the first step to being free. Before we dive deep into applied psychology, subscribe to the channel. Tell me in the comments where you're from. Act 1, The Chemistry of Addiction. 9 minutes, Sarah Chen was 28 years old when her world collapsed on a Thursday afternoon. There was no big fight, no dramatic betrayal. Just a text message at 2:37 p.m., I think we need to talk. 4 hours later, a 3-year relationship was over, and Sarah was sitting on the floor of the apartment they'd shared, surrounded by cardboard boxes, feeling like someone had ripped a vital organ from her body. She was a clinical psychologist, had a master's degree in behavioral neuroscience, spent her days helping other people navigate their emotions. But that night, all the theoretical knowledge in the world didn't stop her from checking her phone every 47 seconds, waiting for a message that wouldn't come. Didn't stop her from driving to his favorite coffee shop at 11 p.m. just to sit in the parking lot and cry. I felt pathetic, she told me years later in an interview for this material. I knew the science. I understood the cognitive processes, but it didn't make a difference. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, knowing exactly what was happening, but completely unable to stop it. What Sarah was experiencing wasn't weakness. It was pure chemistry, and to understand, we need to go back to the beginning of her relationship. When Sarah met Marcus at a New Year's Eve party 3 years earlier, something happened in her brain the moment their eyes met. Her nucleus accumbens, a small region in the center of the brain, lit up like fireworks. Dopamine flooded her neural receptors. It was the same chemical released when someone uses cocaine, when a gambler wins at roulette, when any highly pleasurable reward is experienced. Every text message from Marcus in the following days, every time he touched her hand, every kiss, every "I was thinking about you too," every moment of deep connection. Dopamine. Dopamine. Sarah's brain wasn't just enjoying these moments. It was building a chemical dependency on them. Neuroscience isn't poetry, but sometimes it feels like it. During the first 6 months of the relationship, Sarah's brain was literally rewiring itself. Each experience with Marcus strengthened certain neural pathways, like water running down the same trail in the dirt until it forms a river. Neurons that fire together, wire together, neuroscientists say. And Sarah's neurons were constantly firing in relation to Marcus. It wasn't just dopamine. When they made love, when they cuddled on the couch watching movies, When he held her face with both hands and said he loved her, her brain released oxytocin, the bonding hormone, the same chemical that floods a mother's brain when she holds her newborn baby for the first time. Oxytocin creates attachment, deep primal attachment, the kind evolution designed to last. And there was more. Sarah's serotonin, the neurotransmitter that regulates mood and obsession, plummeted in the early stages of the relationship. Functional MRI studies show that newly in-love people have serotonin levels comparable to people with obsessive-compulsive disorder. That's why you can't stop thinking about them in the beginning. Your brain is literally in a chemical obsessive state. Marcus wasn't just Sarah's boyfriend. He had become part of her brain's neural architecture. When she thought about the future, the images included him. When she felt joy, it was associated with him. Her brain had built thousands of associations. The smell of his morning coffee, the playlist they listened to in the car, the inside joke about cats only they understood, the Thai restaurant on the corner where they had their first date. And then, on a Thursday afternoon, the supply stopped. No more texts that made her heart race. No more presents that made her feel safe. No more doses of that chemical her brain had learned to depend on. What happens when you abruptly withdraw a drug from an addict? Withdrawal. And withdrawal is exactly what Sarah was experiencing, except most people don't recognize it, because we're conditioned to think of withdrawal as something that happens with heroin or alcohol, not with love. But the brain doesn't make that distinction. To Sarah's nucleus accumbens, to her starving dopamine receptors, the loss of Marcus was functionally identical to the loss of a drug. Her brain went into panic mode, started craving obsessively, desperately, for the substance it had lost. That's why Sarah checked Marcus's Instagram 20 times a day, even knowing each time hurt her. That's why she reread old messages at 3 a.m., tears blurring her phone screen. That's why she fantasized about scenarios where he came back, even knowing rationally the relationship had ended for good reasons. She wasn't being irrational. She was in chemical withdrawal, and her brain would do anything to get another hit. Dr. Helen Fisher, biological anthropologist at Rutgers University, spent decades studying the brain in love using MRI technology. In one of her most revealing experiments, she scanned the brains of people who had been recently rejected in relationships. The images showed intense activity in the nucleus accumbens, the region associated with addiction, and in the insular cortex associated with physical pain. Romantic love, Fisher explained in her lectures, is not an emotion. It's a motivation system. It's a drive. And when you lose that love, you're not just sad. You're in withdrawal from a powerful addictive substance. Sarah's brain was sending pain signals because the neural pathways it had built for Marcus were still there, but Marcus wasn't on the other end. It was like calling a number that doesn't exist anymore. The brain keeps making the call, keeps waiting for the connection, and when it can't find it, registers it as pain. And here's the cruel part. The brain doesn't care if the relationship was good for you. Sarah knew Marcus had been emotionally unavailable for the last 6 months, knew he made her feel small when he criticized her career choices, knew their dynamic had become toxic, that ending it was the right decision. But attachment isn't logical. The limbic system, the primitive part of the brain that processes emotion and attachment, doesn't evaluate relationship quality. It only knows connection formed. Bond created, now bond broken. Panic mode activated. That's why you can know with absolute certainty your ex was wrong for you, can list 50 reasons why the relationship didn't work, and still wake up crying, missing them with an intensity that feels irrational. It's not irrational. It's your emotional brain overriding your logical brain. And right now, the emotional one is in control. Act 2, the memory trap. 11 minutes. 3 weeks after the breakup, Sarah was having lunch with her best friend Jen at a noisy downtown cafe. Jen had listened patiently about Marcus for hours over the past weeks, but now her patience was wearing thin. "Sarah, you need to remember what he was really like," Jen said, stirring her coffee with unnecessary force. "You're acting like you lost the perfect man. He forgot your birthday. He canceled plans last minute. He made you feel bad for wanting more attention. Sarah nodded. She knew Jen was right. Logically, she knew. But when she closed her eyes, what she saw wasn't the forgotten birthdays. What she saw was the morning Marcus had made her surprise breakfast, the night he drove 2 hours in heavy rain just to be with her when she was sad, the way he laughed at her terrible jokes. "I know he wasn't perfect," Sarah said quietly, "but the good moments were so good, Jen, so real." What Sarah didn't know is that those good moments she was remembering weren't as real as they seemed. Her brain was editing reality. And there was a precise neuroscientific reason for it. After a breakup, something fascinating and cruel happens with memory. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for rational thought and balanced memory, becomes less active. Meanwhile, the amygdala, the emotional center of the brain, becomes hyperactive. The result? Your memories are filtered through an extreme emotional bias. The brain starts pushing negative memories to the background and highlighting positive memories. Psychologists call this rosy retrospection or post-relationship selective memory. It's an evolutionary defense mechanism that originally existed to keep us connected to partners during difficult times, ensuring the survival of long-term relationships that were essential for raising children. But in an age of divorce and breakups, this same mechanism torments us. Sarah wasn't consciously choosing to forget the bad parts. Her brain was doing it automatically, without her permission. The arguments? Blurred. The times Marcus ignored her at parties? Forgotten. The moments she cried alone because he wasn't emotionally present? Filed in a neural folder rarely accessed, but the surprise breakfast, crystal clear. His laughter, playing in high definition in her memory. The way he kissed her in the rain that July night, replayed like a romantic movie scene, complete with emotional soundtrack. Dr. Donald Riddellmeyer from the University of Toronto studied the phenomenon of selective memory in various contexts. The human brain, he explained in a 2018 publication, is not an objective video recorder. It's a creative editor, and when emotional pain is involved, the editing becomes even more aggressive. We cut the scenes we don't want to relive and amplify the ones we wish to preserve. Sarah's brain was literally rewriting the story of the relationship, creating a romanticized version that never really existed. And she believed that version because it was her own brain telling the story. This made Sarah pick up her phone at 2 a.m. and scroll through old photos. Made her drive past Marcus's house just because it was on the way, even if it meant detouring 15 blocks. Made her compulsively check his social media, looking for, what? Proof he was suffering as much as she was? Proof he'd moved on? Both options hurt equally. Every time Sarah made visual or digital contact with Marcus, something happened in her brain. Her dopamine receptors got a little hit. Not enough to satisfy the craving, but enough to keep it alive. Like a smoker who says they're quitting, but takes an occasional drag. Each drag resets the withdrawal clock. A 2015 study from University College London tracked 96 people going through relationship breakups. Half maintained strict no contact with ex-partners. The other half maintained occasional contact, text messages, social media interactions, meeting as friends. The results were dramatic. The no-contact group showed measurable reduction in withdrawal symptoms after 60 days. fMRI scans showed that activity in the nucleus accumbens, addiction region, decreased significantly. They reported fewer intrusive thoughts, better sleep quality, and improved ability to imagine futures without the ex-partner. The group that maintained contact? After 60 days, their brains looked almost identical to day one. Neural activity associated with addiction remained high. They reported dreaming about ex-partners with the same frequency, thinking about them with the same obsession, and feeling the same sharp pain when seeing photos. No contact worked not because it was punishment or psychological game. It worked because it gave the brain what it desperately needed: space to rewire. Each day without contact, Neurons started creating new pathways. Synapses leading to Marcus started weakening. Associations started fading. But it only worked if it was consistent. One quick look at Marcus's Instagram could undo weeks of Sarah's neural progress. 5 weeks after the breakup, Sarah had a moment of weakness. It was Marcus's birthday. She fought with herself for hours, finger hovering over the phone keyboard. Eventually, she sent a simple message, "Happy birthday, hope you're doing well." He replied 3 hours later, "Thanks. You too." 2 words. You too. Sarah analyzed those 2 words for days. What did they mean? Why did he take 3 hours to respond? Did "to" mean he hoped she was doing well, or that he was also doing well? Or both? That 13-word interaction completely reset her healing process. That night, she dreamed about Marcus for the first time in weeks. In the following days, she found herself constantly checking her phone again, waiting for another message that never came. Her brain had received that little dopamine hit, and now it wanted more. Dr. Guy Winch, psychologist and author of How to Fix a Broken Heart, explains, every interaction with an ex, no matter how small, activates the same neural circuits that were formed during the relationship. It's like having a wound that's starting to heal, and then you reopen it. You're not just losing time, you're literally undoing the healing work your brain had begun. Sarah finally understood this when, 7 weeks after the breakup, she saw photos of Marcus with someone else on social media. The pain was so physical, so visceral, that she doubled over in the work bathroom, hand on her chest, unable to breathe normally. But something else happened in that moment. Through the searing pain, a clarity emerged. She realized that every time she had just checked his profile, every time she had just passed by his favorite cafe, every time she had just asked mutual friends how he was, she had been deliberately hurting herself, not because she was a masochist, but because her brain was desperate for the drug, and she was giving it small doses enough to keep the addiction alive. That night, Sarah made a decision. She blocked Marcus on all platforms, deleted his number, asked mutual friends not to share information about him. When driving, she changed routes to avoid places they'd shared. It was the hardest thing she'd ever done. Harder than defending her master's thesis. Harder than any previous loss. Because it wasn't just one decision. It was a decision she had to remake every hour, sometimes every minute. But she did it. And slowly, painfully, neuron by neuron, her brain began to change. Act.A institution, 7 minutes, 3 months after total no contact, Sarah woke up on a Saturday morning and noticed something strange. She had slept through the night. For the first time since the breakup, she hadn't woken at 3 a.m. with a tight chest thinking about Marcus. It wasn't healed. It was different. The thought of him was still there, but it no longer dominated every moment. It was like music playing in another room, not in the speakers right next to her head. Sarah's brain was rewiring. The neural pathways leading to Marcus were weakening from lack of use. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections, was working for her now, not against her. She had started running. 5 kilometers every morning before work. At first, it was just to escape the thoughts. But something interesting happened. Exercise flooded her brain with endorphins, the body's natural painkillers. It also stimulated production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, a protein that promotes growth of new neurons. Her brain was literally growing new pathways, and these new pathways didn't lead to Marcus. Sarah had also returned to an old passion, pottery. Something about working with clay, creating something tangible with her hands, was deeply therapeutic. Each completed piece, a bowl, a vase, an imperfect sculpture, was physical proof that she could create, not just destroy or mourn. She was seeing friends regularly, not just to vent about the breakup, but to live, to laugh, to remember who she was before Marcus and discover who she could be after him. A 2017 study from Northwestern University followed 210 individuals going through relationship breakups for a year. Those who actively engaged in new experiences, learned new skills, and expanded their social circles showed significantly faster recovery than those who simply let time heal. The brain scans were revealing. The actively engaged group showed measurable growth in the prefrontal cortex, rational thinking, and reduction in amygdala activity, extreme emotional response. They were literally rebuilding their brains to function better. But Sarah also learned something crucial. Healing isn't linear. There were days she felt strong, confident, free, and then something. A song on the radio, a familiar perfume on the street, a couple laughing in a cafe would take her back to the abyss. On one of those bad days, 4.5 months after the breakup, Sarah was sitting on her apartment floor, crying for the first time in weeks, feeling defeated, feeling like all the progress had been an illusion. But then something different happened. She looked at the clock. It was 9 p.m. 4 months ago, a bad day meant crying until 3 a.m. Meant not being able to get out of bed. Meant stalking social media for hours. Now, she was crying, yes. But she was also aware that tomorrow would be better. Aware that this was a setback, not a return to the beginning. She got up, washed her face, made tea, opened a book. By 10 p.m., she was asleep. This, she realized, was real progress, not the absence of pain, but the ability to hold pain without being consumed by it. Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor, neuroscientist at the University of Arizona, specializing in grief, explains, "The brain doesn't forget people we loved by losing all memories or erasing all neural connections. That would be traumatic and dysfunctional. Instead, it learns to categorize differently. The person moves from present to past, from available to no longer part of my daily life. The pathways still exist, but they're no longer the main roads." 6 months after the breakup, Sarah was on a first date. Not because she was looking to replace Marcus, but because a coworker had insisted, and she thought, why not? The date was good. Not amazing, not transformative, just pleasant. The guy was funny, intelligent, interested in her. And Sarah noticed something surprising during dinner. She wasn't comparing everything he said to things Marcus said, wasn't looking for similarities or differences, was just present. Present in the conversation, present in the moment, present in her own life again. When she got home that night, she checked her phone. There were no messages from Marcus. 6 months ago, that would have devastated her. Now, she just turned on the TV, made popcorn, and watched a movie she wanted to see. Marcus's absence was no longer a black hole sucking all light from her life. It was just absence. Empty space she was slowly, patiently filling with other things, with herself. 9 months after the breakup, Sarah was giving a talk at a psychology conference about emotional resilience. During the Q&A session, a young woman raised her hand, voice trembling. "How do you know when you're really healed? When you can trust you won't go back?" Sarah thought carefully before responding. "You don't know for sure. There's no day you wake up completely different. It's more like one day you realize you thought about them just once. Then, maybe, not at all. Then when you do think about them, it doesn't hurt the same way. Healing isn't forgetting. It's remembering without collapsing." The young woman nodded, tears in her eyes. Sarah saw her own journey reflected in that face. Today, 3 years after the breakup, Sarah is married. Not to someone she met rebounding from Marcus, but to someone she met when she was finally whole again, when her brain had completely rewired. When the pathways leading to Marcus had become narrow trails, rarely traveled, instead of neural highways dominating her mental landscape, she still thinks about Marcus occasionally. Not with pain, not with longing, with a kind of gentle neutrality. The way you think about a chapter of your life that was important, but is definitely closed. The hardest part, she told me, was accepting that my brain wasn't against me. It was just doing what brains do, trying to maintain connections, avoid the pain of loss, Seek what's familiar even when familiar is toxic. Once I understood that, I could work with my brain, not against it. Could be patient with the process. And patience, I discovered, is the most radical thing you can offer yourself when you're healing. The human brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons. Each neuron can form up to 10,000 connections with other neurons. The number of possible neural configurations is greater than the number of atoms in the known universe, which means your brain, no matter how stuck it seems now, has literally unlimited capacity to change, to grow, to create new pathways that don't lead to the person you lost, but to the future you haven't imagined yet. You'll get there, not by forcing yourself to forget, but by understanding what's happening and working with your brain, not against it. Neuron by neuron, day by day, choice by choice. Freedom is waiting on the other side of withdrawal, and it's worth every painful moment of the recovery. And that's the end of our experience. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. It's very important for us to know the truth. Be honest in the comments, leaving creative suggestions so we can improve the quality of our content more and more. Comment where you're from. Check out the video on the screen. I'm sure you'll like it. See you in a few seconds. We are Applied Psychology, and this is our contribution. Subscribe.